In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 interesting features in the Lyft driver app when it comes to ride preferences and accepting a ride. Number 1, ride types. Now first, in terms of getting to the ride preferences section in the driver app, all you have to do is click the bottom icon, and you can see it right there. Now in terms of ride types, you have normal and shared, or all of them, and then not doing shared rides. I will talk about shared rides a bit later in this video, but with this option, you can turn off getting Lyft shared rides. Number 2, queued rides. Now, under this option, you can either choose manual or automatic. And what this means is when you're driving, if let's say a ride pops up, automatic, which is the default setting, it will automatically be added to your queue. So you don't really have to look at the app as much. It's a bit safer as the app states and everything, and you can drive and then just add it to your queue. Manual means, like say a ride will pop up, you can look at it and you have the option to select it or not select it, or basically not accept it. And lastly, number 3, ride switches. With this option, what happens is if let's say you're driving to someone else's house and something goes wrong, something happens, tough to say exactly, Lyft will automatically switch you or reroute you to a different person and give you a different ride. Think of this kind of similar to the last point where you can either choose this to be automatic, where they automatically can switch the ride without any warning to you, or you can turn this off. With that all being said, there are 3 really important things now I have to say on this video, because in the beginning, just kind of want to show you which each one was, what it did, etc., etc. The first thing is Lyft shared rides. You may be thinking like, wait a minute, Mark, didn't Lyft get rid of shared rides? Yes, and on that option, you may have seen, when you go to select only, like say, normal Lyft rides and not shared rides, it says like your earnings potential is low or whatever. Ignore that. And I think maybe this is just kind of like, I don't know, old habits die hard or whatever. As everyone knows, doing shared rides, whether it's Uber X share, Lyft shared, whatever, they're horrible. No one likes doing them. So for me, even though Lyft shared doesn't really exist anymore, there still is a part of me that I'm like, you know what? I just don't know if I'm just gonna have it on only Lyft rides and not shared rides, just in case it ever comes back. Now keep in mind, when it comes to the ride types, if let's say you have other options, this could be things like Lux or Black or whatever, those also might appear, but I want to show you the bare bones for a typical Lyft driver. Number 2, manual over automatic. This is a big one. There is a bit of an asterisk on that, but what I mean is you may notice when talking about this that the last 2 points, when it comes to accepting a ride and the ride switches, the biggest thing is it manual or automatic? Automatic, like I said, meaning that you can drive, and there is, I guess, a nice convenience to this. You drive almost like clockwork. The app will add in rides to your queue. You just, pick somebody up, drop them off. The app tells you where to go next. You really don't have to do as much. It's a lot more hassle-free. With manual, and I notice when it comes to a lot of advanced drivers, right, that doing manual selection of the rides is usually the better way to go because you can get the higher paying rides. Because there's been so many times, every driver's experienced this. When you're driving, a ride gets added to your queue automatically, and you're like, all right, you open it up, and you're like, all right, it's 10 minutes from where I am. Okay, you drive there. And they're like, oh yeah, we're going a mile down the road. And you're like, I drove 10 minutes here to drive someone a mile down the road. Now, of course, Lyft does kind of give you some heads up of ride pay, all these different little kind of nitty-gritty things. But I still think it's one of those situations where it's a lot better to evaluate beforehand and choose to accept it or not. I think manual is the way to go. Also, when it comes to ride switching, although it says on or off, in my mind, it's not really on or off. It's more manual or automatic. I think when it comes to ride switching, it should be off. Because like I said, it's the same exact thing kind of as a ride queue, except it can happen in the middle of you driving. That like say you're driving to pick somebody up, you're like, ooh, seems this is going to be a good ride. Like I'm looking at the amount or whatever. Might be a good ride, given the surge, etc., etc. You're driving to pick somebody up. And then Lyft says, oh, sorry, they just canceled or something happened, right? Something happened. We automatically rerouted you to a different person. You're like, okay, cool, whatever. You drive 10 minutes to pick somebody up. They go a mile, and they're like, okay, I have this great paying ride, and now I got this one. If you turn ride switching off, right, at least you don't have to worry about getting put on, like, say, a bad paying ride. I do suggest manual over automatic. However, and I'm going to put an asterisk on this, like I said a bit earlier, and that is for bonuses and incentives. It does depend. It can't change time to time. I remember way back in the day, this was a huge thing, especially for the bonuses in Boston when they were at their peak. Lyft, they don't anymore. Although this might change. I've talked about this. Lyft used to have a guaranteed hourly minimum or a minimum hourly guarantee, I guess, tomato. And I remember one of the parts of that was a 90% acceptance rate for that week. So keep in mind, if, let's say, you choose to do manual, and let's say a ride pops up, you're like, oh, man, it's a horrible ride. I'm not going to do that. You deny 3 rides or ignore them, and then you manually accept the 4th ride, and let's say you're trying to hit a certain bonus, and one of the clauses of that bonus or incentive is you have to have a certain acceptance rate. Make sure you do some nitty-gritty analysis on that, because there were times I remember when I was trying to hit that minimum hourly guarantee in Boston, and I knew it was going to be high-paying minimum hourly guarantee, and I was like, all right, I just got a horrible ride, or this ride is going to be really bad, but I got to do it. And if anything, I remember doing the math out, like, all right, even though this ride sucks, it's pretty bad, I'm better off accepting it, because the minimum hourly guarantee bonus is going to be so good, as if I denied it and got a higher paying ride that might not pay in total the amount that Lyft would pay me to bump me up, because they guaranteed me a minimum amount, if that makes sense. So this is something you do have to weigh out. I think overall, in general, manual is the way to go. There are some drivers, though, who say, you know what, sometimes they get a good ride, sometimes they get a bad one. That's kind of the luck of the dice that is Lyft and Uber and pretty much ride sharing in general. You know what? I'm just going to let it happen, because it's a lot easier. And I will say, it is a lot safer too. I know Lyft does say this. The reason why is they want it makes more sense for Lyft as a company to say, oh, we want drivers to accept all the rides we give them, as opposed to picking and choosing, right? So that's why Lyft kind of suggests that. But that is true too. I will say, you do have to kind of like look up and down. There are some features you can enable on the Lyft driver app where the app will flash if you get like a new ride or a new request for a ride, for example. So there are some features you can enable, but it is a bit more like touch and go and constantly checking the app when it comes to manual selection. With automatic, it is a lot more seamless, and I might even say stress-free, but this is something you do have to weigh out. Overall, though, I suggest for a lot of drivers, if you're trying to maximize your earnings and you're trying to get, a bit very, very specific and picky about which rides to get to make the most amount of money, especially in surge pockets and everything, I think manual all the way. And one last thing I want to mention is GPS. One big thing I want to mention lastly on this video, because of course this video is mainly about accepting rides, is some of the features in the Lyft driver app. And in case you didn't know, you can, and more importantly, you should change the default GPS in the Lyft driver app. The default GPS typically, when you first sign up, is Lyft. It sucks. The Uber GPS as well, it sucks. I know this video is about Lyft, but both Lyft and Uber, I mean, I know they have their own GPS. I still don't know why drivers do it. I get that it's the default, and then it's integrated in the app's GUI meaning graphical user interface. Just go into Lyft settings. It takes 2 seconds to do. I've already done a video about this. I've listed below in the description. All you need to do is go into your settings in terms of navigation. Select Google Maps. That's the best way to go. And which is kind of cool, you may notice that when it comes to Google Maps specifically in the Lyft driver app, you have 2 options. You have the option to do Google Maps, which pulls it up in the other app, which seems normal. Or B, it will pull up in the Lyft driver app itself. This depends upon the person. Sometimes some people do like the whole swiping thing, so the apps are a bit separate, so things will get kind of mixed up or jumbled. Other drivers I know are like, hey, it's integrated right in the app, so even though we have Google Maps, it's like Google Maps inside of the Lyft driver app. Just change the GPS, because among all these things I'm talking about, whether it's automatic or manual or picking the right rides or ride switching, just have a good GPS, because Lyft GPS, I'm sorry Lyft, but the Lyft default GPS is just horrible.